But you want to watch the story hosted by Martha McCallum. You can do both at once. Hi, Martha.
Yes, you can. Thank you, Brett. Good to see you last night and good to see you tonight. So the story digs into the growing pressure tonight on the FBI and the Mueller investigation, as Americans want to know if what we are seeing here is a fair fight and whether another investigation is called for to make sure. So good evening, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, and this is the story. It was a packed hearing room today as Rod Rosenstein went on defense under some intense questioning as text messages obtained by Fox News reveal a clear political bias on the part of top FBI Russia investigator Peter Strzok.
These text messages prove what we all suspected. High-ranking FBI officials involved in the Clinton investigation were personally invested in the outcome of the election.
This is not just political opinions. This is disgusting, unaccountable bias, and there's no way that could not affect a person's work.
It is clear to me after listening to 3 hours of questioning that none of this is about text messages.
Nor is there anything wrong with FBI agents expressing their private political views via private text message.
Not a single solitary American he can imagine would vote for Donald Trump. This is the conflict of interest free special agent assigned. And then he went on, if that weren't enough, to belittle Trump supporters by saying he could smell them at a Walmart in Virginia.
I agree that the text messages raise concern. As I said, I'm going to withhold my judgment until the investigation is completed.
You get the idea. Congressman Trey Gowdy joins me live in just a moment, but first Ed Henry at the White House tonight with this top story. Hi, Ed.
Good to see you, Martha. Gasoline on the fire that was already raging, with lawyers for President Trump saying there should be a second special counsel appointed to investigate the FBI and career officials at the Justice Department for an alleged bias against President Trump. In the hot seat today, as you noted, the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who appointed the special counsel in the Russia probe, he testified he does not see an appearance problem with people on Robert Mueller's team donating money to Democrats like Hillary Clinton. That fired up Republicans on the panel, who brandished those stunning anti-Trump text messages that a former member of the Mueller team, FBI official Peter Strzok, sent to his girlfriend, FBI official Lisa Page. Among the texts first reported by Fox last night, March 4th of 2016, after Page calls candidate Trump a, quote, loathsome human, Strzok says, good for Hillary. She says it is. He says, would he be a worse president than Cruz? Trump, yes, I think so. He says, I'm not sure. OMG, he's an idiot. Remember, that was while the FBI agent was an integral part of the agency's probe into Hillary Clinton's email server. And Strzok was the one credited with changing the wording, and then FBI Director James Comey's assessment from grossly negligent to extremely careless. Then look at that second text you just heard about involving Walmart, August 2016. Strzok text, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support. Republicans believe the most explosive text, though, involves the controversial FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Remember, his wife raked in about $500,000 from a PAC tied to Clinton friend Terry McAuliffe. The problem with this August 2016 text, it speaks to a possible conspiracy. Strzok texting, quote, I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he or Trump gets elected. But I'm afraid we can't take that risk. Rosenstein repeatedly deflected questions about that.
If you have those Walmart shopping Trump voters that Peter Strzok so derided in his text messages, how do they react to that? Do they have confidence in their FBI and their Department of Justice?
We have appropriate internal affairs officers who will get to the bottom of that.
Now, Rosenstein vaguely said that report will be coming out fairly soon, and he also defended Robert Mueller and said he does not regret hiring him as a special counsel, noting that when these Strzok texts were first learned over the summer, Mueller pushed him aside, Martha.
Ed, thank you very much. So today's Congressman Trey Gowdy pressed Rosenstein on the reports of bias on the Mueller Russia investigative team. Here's a bit more of that.
So let's be really clear why we have special counsel. There was either a real or perceived conflict of interest that we were fearful would either impact the result or people's confidence in the process. And then lo and behold, those who are supposed to make sure there are no conflicts of interest seem to have a few of their own. There's a senior prosecutor who sent obsequious emails to a fact witness. She's a really important fact witness if you pursue the line of inquiry that my Democrat friends want to pursue. They got off of collusion, and now they're on obstruction of justice.
So here exclusively on the story tonight, House Judiciary Member Trey Gowdy. Congressman, welcome. I believe that you were referring to Sally Yates there and the email that she received from Andrew Weissman congratulating her on not defending the Trump ban and saying that he was in awe of her, I think are the words he used. So you pressed Rod Rosenstein on this today. Were you satisfied with the answer that you got to that question?
A little bit, but you know, he was explaining all day. This is a really bad fact pattern. I hate it for Rod Rosenstein that he's the one explaining it, because he's not Peter Strzok and he's not Andy McCabe and he's not Jim Comey, so he's having to do a little bit of cleanup. But these are really bad facts if you care about an impartial, objective Department of Justice and FBI.
All right, I want to go to the other part of the text messages that goes to this question of conspiracy, because as Ed Henry laid out, the timeline on all of this is very problematic. This is a text message from Peter Strzok to Lisa Page. I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected. But I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event that you die before you're 40. Now, you know, obviously everyone's going to try to figure out what he was going to do to make sure that you couldn't take that risk. But it would help everyone to understand that at the time that he said that, he was investigating Hillary Clinton to decide whether or not they were going to pursue charges against her.
Yes, ma'am. I'm still trying to figure out why 3 FBI agents are discussing politics in the deputy director's office, because you're not supposed to discuss politics on federal ground, and FBI agents aren't supposed to engage in politics for Hatch Act reasons. Remember, we were supposed to interview Andy McCabe yesterday on another committee. It was all set up and ready to go, and then at the last minute they said, he can't come Tuesday. He's going to come next week. I'll be shocked if he comes next week. I'll be a little bit surprised if he's still an employee of the FBI this time next week. But the notion that 3 bureau agents would be conspiring or plotting on how to handle the outcome of a presidential election is the opposite of what you want in an objective, dispassionate, neutral FBI.
All right, so you said that when you go home to South Carolina next week, you're going to get a lot of questions about all of this.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would imagine that your constituents are going to want to know, so what happens? You know, what happens now? How are they going to right this ship?
They will want to know that, and they will want to know whether or not we can trust or rely upon what Robert Mueller comes up with. And I have been very defensive of Robert Mueller from day one, even up until as recently as a week ago. But he hired some people that have terrible bias, and he didn't have to. There are plenty of women and men who don't contribute to political campaigns. There are plenty of prosecutors he could have hired. So at some point, Bob Mueller is going to have to explain, how did he vet these prosecutors and agents? How did these folks slip by? Because what's going to happen, Martha, is if he decides to do something to the Trump campaign or prosecute President Trump, Republicans have a built-in argument for bias, that the fix was in from day one. And if he clears President Trump, then the Democrats are going to say, well, the pressure from the Republicans was so unrelenting. He's in a no-win situation, but he's there because of some of the decisions he's made.
Yeah. Do you think that conspiracy point that we just talked about, does that lay the groundwork for any Hatch Act investigation, do you think, before I let you go?
Well, I think using an official phone to discuss politics is a Hatch Act violation. That's my old job, but it is incredibly problematic that you are in the deputy. Remember, Jim Comey gets very sanctimonious when you talk to him about a politicized FBI. Very sanctimonious. Well, guess what? In his deputy director's office, they were discussing how to prevent one candidate from becoming president of the United States. It doesn't get any more political than that.
That they wanted some kind of insurance policy against that potential eventuality, which they obviously all found an atrocious idea. Trey Gowdy.
Almost as bad as Ted Cruz. Almost as bad as Ted Cruz.
Right? Congressman, thank you so much. Always good to talk to you. So here now with more reaction to all of this, Katie Pavlich, the townhall.com news editor, and Jessica Tarlov, senior director of research at bustle.com and author of America in the Age of Trump. Both are Fox News contributors. Jessica, let me start with you. Your reaction to all this today, is any of what has been brought up here problematic to you as an American citizen watching all this?
Absolutely. I think that the text messages before the conspiracy theory part seem to be personal political beliefs. And that is not in violation of the Hatch Act. We're all entitled to that, and you can certainly talk to your girlfriend about that. And, you know, people meet at work, so FBI agent and FBI agent. When you get to a conversation about thinking about ways in which you could stop this that went on in Andy McCabe's office, that's distressing, and I agree with Congressman Gowdy about that. I think that Robert Mueller took the right steps, obviously, the second he knew about this, to get rid of Peter Strzok. But I see why people don't trust. They started not trusting over the summer when there was the indictment, non-indictment. Then, you know, Democrats hated Jim Comey for bringing up the letter with the Huma Abedin emails that may have very well cost Hillary Clinton the election when you think we lost by 78,000 votes. And now we're back to this. So both sides, you know, you can pick your poison about the FBI.
And just to remind everyone at home, Peter Strzok was the person who changed the language from from grossly negligent to extremely careless in the way that Jim Comey was going to present the argument that she did not need to be indicted. And that language is very important, Katie. So is that perhaps, and I'm just throwing out a possibility here, what he meant by, I'm afraid we can't take that risk?
Yeah, well, you ask a very good question in the sense of what were they planning to do? And when you look at the details that were asked today and the answers that were given and the ties we now have between the Associate Deputy Attorney General, who asked for the co-founder of Fusion GPS to come to the Justice Department to have a meeting, and then later his wife is hired at Fusion GPS to investigate Trump and individuals working on the Trump campaign, it sure looks to me like this is more about collusion between the Obama Justice Department, which the Obama administration had a habit of using federal agencies to go after their political enemies, and collusion between Fusion GPS, which then led to this dossier being used to get a FISA warrant on American citizens who are working on a transition campaign. And the thing is today is Rod Rosenstein, he knows whether that dossier was used to get the FISA warrant. And he didn't say so. He didn't say yes or no whether it was. He knows if it was. And that's the question here, because there have been serious violations and abuses of power when it comes to not just the process here and the conflict of interest and the political leanings being exposed. This is about American citizens who are simply working on a different political side of the aisle being spied on as a result of this collusion at the Justice Department and between this investigative firm.
But we did hear from both Rod Rosenstein and Christopher Wray that they had complete confidence in the Mueller investigation, and they did not think he should be removed.
Where they are at this point.
Yes.
But, you know, so that's my last question to you, Jessica, in terms of the confidence that people should have in this. And as Trey Gowdy just pointed out, the problem is if they do find something egregious in this handling of the Trump administration or the Trump campaign, it's not going to look good in terms of how they got there. And there will be questions raised about whether or not it was a political assessment.
Absolutely. I think the problem with just our times generally, and we've spoken about this a lot, and even the results last night coming in from Alabama, is that we are a completely divided partisan country at this point, and people are going to pick their narrative based on who they back. So if Robert Mueller comes back and he says, actually, Donald Trump spoke directly with Vladimir Putin, and he said, hey, thanks so much for doing all of this for me. I can't wait to work closely with you once I'm president. Republicans might be like, that's made up. That's not what happened here. And Democrats are going to go for their narrative. And
I think that's definitely true. But, so are we going to accept the fact we're going to say we live in a world where you can't find 10 people who don't really get involved in politics and who are attorneys who really do draw right down the line?
I will say I do know that Robert Mueller asked for Republicans and conservatives to apply to work on the special counsel. Whether they did apply or whether they were rejected, I do not know. I know that he did ask. But the question moving forward is, again, how does this get reconciled? How does the FBI and the Department of Justice get credibility back when this is the situation that they have at hand? And Robert Mueller, as Trey Gowdy said, was respected by both sides of the aisle when he was picked, but this looks really
cheered
bad.
on by Newt Gingrich as a good pick at that point. All right, you guys, thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha.
So coming up, one of the president's fiercest critics now calling on Melania Trump and the other women of the White House to denounce the president, she says, as a sexist pig. And if she won't, she should just go home. Governor Mike Huckabee responds to that. And basketball legend Charles Barkley getting political. He says Democrats need to, quote, get off their bleep and stop abusing the black vote. Does he have a point? We will debate that coming up. And the Dow hitting new highs continues to go higher and higher, almost 25,000 now, as tax reform looks more realistic than ever before. But could the Republicans' slimming majority in the Senate put all of that at risk? And will there be any backroom deals to push this bill over the line? Chris Direwalt joins us next.